My great-grandfather was a civil engineer, and he headed the civil engineering department at Worcester Tech. And in 1912, he had 4 boys, young up into their teens. And they lived in Worcester, and he said, he thought, I got to raise my boys in the countryside, get them out of the cities, keep them out of trouble in the summertime. And he had summers off because he was in education. So he heard about this old farm up here in the town of Sterling, and he came and looked at it and fell in love with it and bought it. So in July of 1912, 103 years ago, he signed the deed and bought this whole farm for $1,200. Nice. He thought it was a fortune. Mm-hmm. So he had 4 boys, and the eldest of his sons was my grandfather, Willard. And so he took a keen interest, particularly amongst the 4 boys, of the farm life. So he went on and he got his degree in pomology and agriculture at Mass Aggie at the time, which would later become UMass.
Stockbridge.
Yeah. And he became an educator. He taught agriculture and pomology. I remember him bringing students here when I was very young. And he was also, would spend many years as the principal of a high school, North High in Worcester. So he had summers off. So he naturally took over this apple operation, which my great-grandfather started. It was all the rage. 1910, 1912, there were a lot of people going into the apple business. That was considered the big money crop at the time. There's quite a number of orchards in Sterling, and it's surprising how many of them started about that same time as a commercial venture. So he got in on that boat.
Your grandfather's name was?
My great-grandfather was Arthur.
Uh-huh.
My grandfather was Willard. My father's Arthur. My older brother is Willard, so it kind of skips. So my grandfather sort of took it over from his father. Again, with summers free, it was easier for him to do that. And then ultimately my father, Arthur, would take over the business from his father, and then I've taken it on after my father's passing about 11 years ago. Mm-hmm. So it's this family tradition. You take over the apple orchard, everyone gets a chance to lose money at it, and we all had daytime jobs and knew that the apple business was more of a hobby than it was a living. So it's by commercial standards, it's a fairly small orchard we have here, but we're big into heirloom varieties, and we got about 22 varieties of trees. Some of them are really cool trees, some neat old-fashioned varieties. And we've done maybe 1,000 bushel a year at our peak, 1,000, 1,200 bushel a year, and we've scaled way back. We still do a few hundred bushel every year. So my dad picked up about 50 acres. We had about 15, 16 acres here when my great-grandfather bought it. And my dad bought another 50 acres, which was one of the most exciting things in my life when he bought that land up behind us here from the neighbor. I think that's where my interest in land preservation was triggered at a very early age. So it's been that size for close to 50 years. The first 45 years, from 1912 until 1957, was a summer place, and the family lived elsewhere in the wintertime. And when I was a little kid, my siblings and I were the first generation to actually be raised on the farm. So for 55 years, it's been a year-round residence, and for 45 years, if my math is right, it was a summer place. What really interests me the most about this farm is that it's only been in 2 families since 1746. Isn't that cool? So the first family was here for 150 years, 5 generations, and they raised 26 children here. There was a workshop here. They had cottage industries. They made straw hats. We still have the plaster mold forms that they use. They made ladders. They made chairs, and we think maybe they worked on shoes. All in a shop that sat on that lawn over there, which has since been taken down. So between farming, dairy, sheep, and cottage industries, they made it here. Something we haven't been able to do.
Was it both sides of the road?
Yep. And this barn has been here since, the house has been here since 1746. This barn's been here since about 1840. an older barn. The shop that sat over there was probably as old as the house. So that's a very keen interest of mine, how this place has supported all those people for all those years.
So the barn tells me it was a dairy farm?
It was. They had, we think about 6 to 8 cows, which was typical back then.
Subsistence. And maybe selling it to Worcester? Or?
Yeah. Yeah. Or a lot of it in the beginning would have been made into cheese. So, and it was likely that the women of the household made the cheese, and that was another source of cash. So, though, you know, those of us who have lived here, myself, through to my great-grandfather, have all very much enjoyed living here, but we've had to leave it every weekday until we retire.